Okay, calm down.
What can you tell us about Israel's prisoners, the Palestinian prisoners that Israel's
Yeah.
holding?
So as I mentioned earlier, since this whole thing started, Israel has been conducting nightly raids in the West Bank, rounding people up. And so I believe the number is around 1,500, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere between 1,200 and 1,500 Palestinians from the West Bank and East Jerusalem have been rounded up and thrown in jail. In addition to that, you have 4,000 Palestinians from Gaza. So they were working as day laborers in Israel. So basically, they got stuck when this whole thing happened, and no one was allowed to go back to Gaza. Israel rounded all of them up, threw them at checkpoints in the West Bank. So people and Palestinians of the West Bank sort of took them in Ramallah and Bethlehem and different cities. They were sleeping in different community centers. Then Israel went back and started rounding up these Gaza laborers as well and throwing them in jail. So over the past couple weeks, I think the Palestinian prisoners' rights group said that Israel doubled the Palestinian prisoner population in like 2 weeks. So before this all started, before October 7th, I believe the number of Palestinian prisoners was around 5,200. Of those 5,200, you had over 100 children, a couple dozen women, and then you also had over 1,000 Palestinian prisoners who were administrative detainees. So, administrative detention is this policy used by Israel almost exclusively against Palestinians to basically imprison them without charge or trial. So like let's talk about the idea of hostages, right? Just like you're getting kidnapped from your home, taken to a foreign place, whatever, and held there against your will. Israel had about 1,000 of those, including children, before this all started. So administrative detainees, they're taken from their homes are raided in the middle of the night. They're taken from their homes. They're blindfolded, handcuffed. They're beaten up along the way. They're interrogated without the presence of a lawyer. That also goes for Palestinian children who are arrested. They're interrogated without the presence of parents or lawyers for days on end. And then with administrative detainees, basically, these are people that, if Israel wants to imprison you, but it doesn't have any solid evidence against you, you have not committed a crime, and it can't prove that you committed a crime, but they treat you as a threat. They see you as a threat. They can throw you in administrative detention. So you're not officially charged. You're never given a trial, and you are put in jail for indefinitely for renewable periods of like 3 to 6 months. So maybe you get handed down an administrative detention order of 3 months. Once 3 months is up, they can renew it again, and they can keep renewing it. And people spend years in administrative detention without ever having committed a crime or ever even being charged with anything. And so there were around 1,000, 1,200 Palestinians in administrative detention before this started. Now you have upwards of 5,000 Palestinians. So that's including the Gaza laborers, as well as Palestinians from the West Bank and East Jerusalem who have just been rounded up. So anyone affiliated with Hamas, anyone from Gaza, anyone remotely perceived to be a threat is being thrown in jail. And the vast, vast, vast majority of these people they've not been charged. So they're just sitting in jail without any charges against them. And so far, 2 Palestinian prisoners who had recently been arrested, including a senior Hamas official in the West Bank, they've died in prison in Israeli custody, and their families don't know what happened to them. No one knows what happened to them. Were they tortured to death? Were they beaten to death? No one is clear on what happened. And so that is what is happening right now. And even in cases, we've heard a lot of stories over the past couple weeks where like Israeli forces will come to your home to arrest you. And if they don't find you, they will take someone. So like if they don't find a man, They'll take his wife, they'll take his kid, they'll take his dad. They'll just take members of their family and then threaten them and say like, "Well, if your husband doesn't show up, then like you're going to stay in jail. Or if, your son doesn't turn himself in, then." So I don't know what you would call that, but that is basically what's been happening in the West Bank for the past couple weeks. And of course, this is something that's been happening for decades and decades. And I just want to add also, like when we
So
talk about
disgusting.
Palestinian prisoners. So the other argument is like when we talk about hostage exchanges or prisoner exchanges, the argument is like, why would we exchange innocent Israelis for for convicted terrorists, right?
Right.
So, first of all, again, over, you know, let's say a fifth or a quarter, if we wanted to add up between the Palestinians who are there without any charge, the women and the kids, like they make up around a quarter of the Palestinian prisoners, right? Um, but even then, the Palestinians who are charged with crimes, you know, they are tried in Israeli military courts. They're tried in a military court system that has a 99.7% conviction rate against Palestinians. They've been described by human rights groups as kangaroo courts, basically. The system is designed in a way to like anyone who comes through there, whether it's a 12-year-old kid that's been throwing stones or a Palestinian who has killed an Israeli soldier, for example, they're they're tried and prosecuted by Israeli military prosecutors and judges in a system that is literally designed specifically for them and in a way that makes sure that they're put into jail.
It's so gross. And no one ever talks about this, obviously.
R- Right, because it's like Palestinian prisoners are like, I don't know, it's like a taboo subject, right? Because there's this perception that, oh, they're all terrorists,
Right.
these high security prisoners that have like killed Israelis and killed Israeli soldiers. But no one talks about the system like in which
Right.
they've been imprisoned or prosecuted, or the thousands of Palestinians who are in jail like without ever even having a day in court.